somebody new to the sport, which it's the only way we continue to grow, is to keep bringing people into our sport, keep telling our story, and make them feel welcome and make them feel needed and valued within us.
Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go.
It's the first 2 weeks of a brand new quarter, which can only mean one thing. Be a Maker School is open for enrollment. So what exactly is Be a Maker School? It's an online course platform specifically for Western trades. You can learn from home and at your own pace and join a community of makers and entrepreneurs who can support you as you build skills and confidence in your newfound hobby or career. Be a Maker School offers courses in equine photography, cinch making, rawhide and leather braiding, silversmithing and engraving, leatherwork and tooling, and then there's also a business course called The Business of Making, where I am one of the instructors. That course specifically details all of the business aspects behind being a maker. Different sales channels, shipping, marketing, website, branding, email correspondence, goal setting, and a number of other topics. As I mentioned earlier, Be a Maker School is only open for enrollment for the first 2 weeks of every quarter. So if you're interested now, it's definitely worth checking out. Otherwise, you have to wait another 3 months. You can grab all of the info at beamaker.school. Again, that website is beamaker.school. I can't wait to hear how you have inspired and fostered the maker that is inside of you. We are coming at you guys today with a brand new episode of the podcast, as always. And today's guest, you guys are going to love her. She is somebody who has seen rodeo from nearly every possible angle. As an athlete and as a coach, as a producer, and now as commissioner of the Women's Rodeo World Championship. Linsay Rosser Sumpter has dedicated her career to just advancing opportunities for women in Western sports while really balancing a deep respect for tradition, yet having a very clear eye towards innovation, which I feel like is the trifecta of what our industry needs. She is somebody who is just so passionate about building pathways for the next generation and really pushing for rodeo's continued growth and making sure athletes, both male and female, have those tools and the visibility that they need in order to succeed. So in this conversation, we are diving deep into her vision for the future of rodeo, the importance of strong leadership, and the lessons that she has carried from the arena into every single role she has taken on in life. It is my pleasure to share with you guys today Linsay Sumpter. Linsay, I am so excited about this conversation. You have been at the helm of Women's Rodeo World Championship. It has been a powerhouse event. How long has this been around, though? Because it's not new by any means, but it is in the realm of Western sports. It's new.
It's fairly new. Yeah, it's new onto the spectrum, but really it kind of stemmed from an event that the WCRA had in Chicago. And they worked hand in hand with the PBR on a lot of different, live events. And so Gary McKinney and Sean Gleason were sitting in Chicago and saw the just crowd's reaction from when Jackie Crawford won 50,000 and her son was there. And she was just so thankful and so passionate about her craft. And they saw how much there was a need for women in the industry. So they kind of came together and decided right then and there. I mean, instantaneously, they went on CBS live television and said, we are going to bring the largest all-female rodeo to the world, and we're going to add a bunch of money, and women are going to have a better platform in the industry. So that was about 2019. So 2020 was the inaugural year for Women's Rodeo World Championship. It was amongst COVID. And the PBR was continuing to do their events that we all saw them do at Guthrie at, the Lazy E. And so they had their world finals at AT&T that year, and Women's Rodeo World Championship. The preliminary rounds were at Will Rogers at Cowtown. And so I was lucky enough to see all of this stuff happening as a contestant. I've been rodeoing my whole life and continue to still compete as a breakaway roper and barrel racer and team roper, for women. And I went there. I figured when you have $750,000 added to female athletes, that's somewhere that I need to be. So I competed at the first two Women's Rodeo World Championships in Fort Worth, Texas was year one. Year two, I went to Las Vegas, Nevada to, the South Point, and we had Women's Rodeo Championship there, both simultaneously with the PBR World Finals. So after 2021, I kind of was just having a conversation with the men that ran the event. And I said, hey, there's a few things that I see that I think that would help the event. I don't want it to go anywhere. There's not a lot of opportunity for ladies to compete for over $183,000 in each discipline. With the breakaway, the team roping was equal money, and the barrel racing. And I just didn't want it to go away. And they said, hey, we've really been thinking about this, and we need somebody to kind of be that voice of reason for us. Here's a bunch of male, running a female rodeo. And so they asked me to be the commissioner, and I've been the commissioner of women's rodeo since 2022. And so I'm actually 2021, I'm kind of creeping on almost 4.5, 5 years with them. And we have only continued to grow. So since 2020, we've awarded almost $5 million to female rodeo athletes. We have, our grand finale, $60,000. You can see the check behind me, $750,000 every year since 2020. And we continue to make it grow. We are one of the only rodeo organizations that gives a cash bonus to our world champions. We classify the ladies in their athletic abilities. So my favorite part about women's rodeo and what it stands for is it is an inclusive environment for all female rodeo athletes, whether you are the 1% at the top who are competing and that's what they do for their living, or they're like myself who have a couple different irons in the fire and jobs, or yourself and you used to high school rodeo and decided to, knock the dust off your rope can and come back, or maybe you got a barrel horse, a fraternity horse, and is really taken to the rodeo situation and you want to have that place. And that's just where women's rodeo, that's why I think it's grown. And that's why I think it's really caused this ripple effect within the industry to see how women were underserved and how much passion and drive with the PBR is behind this brand.
So you are somebody who literally, this is not your first rodeo. And I say that you weren't somebody who had just qualified for this Women's Rodeo World Championship a couple of times and then became commissioner. You are from a very iconic Western sports and rodeo family. You have grown up in this industry, rodeoing, riding horses, stock contracting. You've worked for the PBR in the past. Like, you have done all different facets of this industry. So you really do have a passion for every element. But can you kind of take us back in case somebody isn't maybe as familiar with that story as far as how you got to where you are?
Yeah. I was born by rodeo genetic default, to be honest. Born in a rodeo family. Like you said, my grandfather is Cotton Rosser. My dad is Lee Rosser. And I grew up in the rodeo business. I have been on both sides of the arena, from behind it being a secretary, timer, production. I carried the American flag at the NFR when I was 6 years old. My grandpa started kind of the pageantry. They called him P.T. Barnum of rodeo. And so he was very instrumental in bringing a lot of, new elements to rodeo. When you see the Manu, he's from France and he jumps the bulls, Grandpa was the one who brought him over. Bobby Kerr started with Grandpa. John Payne, all of these amazing acts that have continued to grow. Really, my grandpa was a visionary behind so many of those things. So I saw the passion behind what the fans saw. And I saw the passion behind making rodeo better for contestants. And so with that, I don't know, I just kind of inherited all of these things. And I am a diehard rodeo contestant. It was funny. The other day I entered some regional rodeos, some amateur rodeos around here. And I called one of my girlfriends and I said, hey, you want to go to this rodeo with me? And she's like, when are you going to quit doing that? And I'm like, never. Like, what? People stop competing. Like, that's crazy. So, rodeoed all through high school, went to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo on a rodeo scholarship, rodeoed all through there, made the college national finals. And like you said, worked for PBR and did PR and marketing with them right out of college. And then I started a rodeo program out here in Southeast Colorado, Otero College. And I was the head rodeo coach for 15 seasons with them. When I started, I was one of 3 in the country female head coaches, like not just a women's coach. I was the only coach that was at that institution and have grown that program. I think the first year we had 17 students, and then I usually would keep a team of about 25 to 30 students. So, just rodeo has given my family so much. I think I just feel like I have to give back to it. And I love rodeo and I don't want it to go anywhere. And I see the different trends that are happening within rodeo and contestants and how much it costs and the limited numbers there are in the rough stock events. And then, I'm of the generation that when you finished college, if you weren't a barrel racer, your rodeo career was pretty much over unless you wanted to team rope and, go to the World Series. Even has gotten bigger since then. And now, heck, it's even bigger than the NFR when it comes to payout. But there was just so much when all of this kind of transpired and then getting behind the brand of women's rodeo that I just see so much value in it. And I say this a lot, I don't ever want my sons or your daughter to know what it's like to work so hard to be good at a craft and then never have an opportunity to make that your living. And I really have a passion behind maybe saying things that aren't really, kosher to a lot of people. This is a male dominated sport. Most of the time, the organizations are managed by men, and there's not a lot of women that come in here and can say, you tell me when you invite me to the table and you give me peanut butter and jelly and everybody else is getting steak, that's okay. I'm not sure that it is. When you look at the added money for the national finals of breakaway roping in comparison to what's going on in the Thomas and Mack. So just little things like that. I just love rodeo and I don't want the sport to go anywhere. And it's our Western heritage. Rodeo is one of the oldest sport, horse racing is a sport of kings, but the West was won at rodeos. I mean, all the ranchers coming together and having their competitions and women used to be such a huge integral part of that. And then it got kind of stripped away for a while. And, obviously barrel racing has always been there, but it boils me to hear somebody who's been in the industry a long time say that the breakaway ropers need to pay their dues. I go, I'm sorry, but being excluded for 50 years seems like a pretty good due pay to me. So just little things like that where you kind of fuel my fire with some of those kind of animosities that come towards women in the industry. And that just makes me push harder. I just love rodeo and I don't want it to go anywhere, and I'm passionate about it. And I want it to be an avenue that ladies can make a living doing it.
I love what you say too about the history of rodeo and what an important piece of that women were at one time. Think about the Pendleton Roundup and Mabel Strickland. Like, she has been their poster girl for years and years and years. That was a huge piece, was the female element of those very early days rodeo. And it's kind of came full circle. But I think one of the interesting things, and I don't remember where I was, I think it was at the APHA's Cowgirl Essex Exchange. It was a few years ago, but there was a historian who was from the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. And she was talking about one of those Mabel Strickland era cowgirls and how it was so risque of her to wear jeans instead of a dress. And men, not necessarily men, probably women too, because we know how that feels, but people were so against her wearing jeans instead of wearing a dress. And now I think how the conversation has changed. And now if you're a woman wearing a dress and you're out doing something on the farm or ranch, like, well, you're not a cowgirl, you should be wearing jeans. Like, do you realize your grandma did everything in a dress? It wasn't really that long ago where my mom had to wear a dress to school. That was a requirement. And so I do think that because of where we are now, we have kind of forgotten about the past and how it really wasn't that long ago. It was just barely over 100 years ago that women got the right to vote. There are still women alive to this day who were born in a time where women didn't have the right to vote or to be able to own property. That really wasn't that long ago either. So I think, holy cow, how far have we came and how far are we going to continue to go? But in reality, it really hasn't been that long since the time period that we are all so removed from.
Absolutely. I mean, if you just look at how the fight for women in rodeo and in sports, really, I mean, you can look at Title IX and there's obviously with transgender stuff, and there's a lot of controversy behind all of that. And that's like a whole nother podcast in its own right. But when you look at Title IX and what it was for, it was to make sure that there was equal opportunity for ladies in sport. That didn't necessarily happen for rodeo. You know, if you look at college rodeo, this is a fun little tidbit. My dad was on the board for college rodeo in the 70s when he college rodeoed at Cal Poly. He voted against women being able to team rope. Mr. Lee, that was not very nice. And then here's his daughter who I am almost 6 foot tall. I'm not built to be a jockey. I love running barrels. And I probably, up until breakaway got bigger, it was so funny because we would talk about roping and, you know, how much money you'd won, you know, your lifetime earnings in the breakaway roping. And I'm like, I've won more in the barrel race than I ever did in the breakaway because there wasn't an opportunity for it, especially in the West Coast. Texas had all the big breakaway jackpots. And I would come down here and team rope and go to those breakaways. But really, I had won more money running barrels because when I got done with college, I had a barrel horse and I would go to the circuit rodeos and run barrels. And it's always kind of a joke to think that that was the only opportunity. But like you said, history told us that Title IX made it to where women had a chance in sports in general, athletics, and it never really transitioned. Women fought, you know, the WPRA fought tooth and nail to get equal money. I mean, team ropers still fight to get equal money. So that equity and inclusivity is not necessarily really adapted quite well into the world of rodeo, but I'm just going to continue to fight for it and only speak truths. You know, if the go-rounds at the NFR in the bareback riding and, you know, all of those events in the Thomas and Mack pay $34,000 and the number one breakaway roper from the breakaway NFR only wins $33,000 in 10 rounds and the average, that should be embarrassing. As a producer, I would be embarrassed that that was a thing. But everybody's trying to, we had 250,000. Well, that's great. Those girls are rodeoing 9 months out of the year. They're away from their families. They're away from all of their life. They're taking their children on the road. They have to pay nannies and then drivers and all of these things. And then they get to rope for pennies on the dollar in comparison to the other events, all because they're supposed to pay their dues.
Has this been corrected as well? Is there a rodeo count for breakaway?
There wasn't a rodeo count, which made it even harder for the girls because they'd have to rodeo quite a bit harder. Yeah. But now there is a rodeo count now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So slowly but surely making strides.
Yeah. But I mean, which I'm super thankful. There was the very first year when Cheyenne had the breakaway rope in, I think it was in 2018, and they just had it. Oh, it wasn't sanctioned. It was just an open breakaway, and they allowed, I think it was 500 of us. No, I'm sorry. There was 200 that got in and 550 or something tried to get into the rodeo. And I made the short round at Cheyenne that year. And I did a couple interviews and I was just like, I never in my wildest dream as a little girl roping the dummy, I always thought I would team rope there. I always thought I would back in the box. And when I was at Cheyenne, I was team roping. I'd be roping the head and dummy. Never did I ever think that I could breakaway rope there. So the opportunity is great and super thankful. I mean, there's so many rodeo committees that are for it. And then, you know, like the PBR, obviously taking women's in and the WCRA for what they did for women. WCRA was one of the few organizations that always had breakaway roping. When they started their rodeo adventure into this whole industry, they always had breakaway roping. It always had equal money. And so WCRA really kind of changed the game. And then obviously with Gary McKinney and Sean Gleason coming in and bringing women's, then it really changed the game.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I want to talk about this because you are somebody, and I hope that our audience really recognizes, and this is why a lot of people have a lot of respect for you, is because you have such a unique perspective of rodeo. As you mentioned, you have been a secretary, you have been a timer, you have been on the inside of the arena, you have been on the stock contracting side, you have been marketing and communications for PBR. You really, truly have. There's probably not anything inside or outside of or an element of rodeo that you have not done, maybe bullfighting. I don't know. But if you probably would do it just to say you've done it.
Times though, like at rodeo practice that like I had bullfighters and a kid was hung up and I'd have to go rope a bull because I was scared that they weren't going to get unhung up to kind of stop the bull so they could help him. So I haven't done that, but I've flanked and picked up and yeah, there's a lot of things.
Your husband's a steer wrestler, so I know you've hazed for him. Like there really isn't an element of rodeo that you have not done. And again, I think that's why you are so well respected. It's that story of somebody who you came into a company as the janitor and you worked your way up throughout all of the elements and all of the offices and departments. And then when you got to the head, you really were a great leader because you understood how the sausage was made, or you understood all of the elements so that when you made decisions, you were fully aware of the ripple effect that decision made for everybody, the people who are putting these rodeos on, the personnel, the audience, that element of it for contestants. And so rodeo is something that is very rooted in tradition. This we know. Obviously, Women's Rodeo World Championship is something that is a newer, I would say futuristic spin on that tradition. But how do you focus on balancing the history and honoring that with also continuing to push forward into the future?
Well, you have to innovate. I mean, in order to grow, you have to innovate and you have to be malleable. You have to be able to adapt and adjust. I think that my favorite part about women's rodeo is we do classify the ladies in all three disciplines on their athletic ability. What that means is there is a time that if you decide to get into breakaway roping again, you won't have to go toe to toe with Martha Angeloni and Jackie Crawford from day one. You can get kind of comfortable. I mean, like I always say, like even a blind squirrel gets a nut, right? But you can get comfortable and you can kind of understand, like when you go to a new arena, and I still do it as a contestant, like I kind of get that like, pound your chest, like get kind of pumped up, like, yeah, I've never been here before. This is cool. And you're trying to find the rodeo office and there's nerves that kind of play in that. And so really with the classification system that Women's has implemented, it allows somebody new to the sport, which that's the only way we continue to grow, is to keep bringing people into our sport, keep telling our story and make them feel welcome and make them feel needed and valued within us. So that is our limited classification. Think 4D barrel racers who only go to barrel racing jackpots, but would kill to be in AT&T Stadium competing for a $60,000 check, right? There's an avenue for that lady. You know, think the mom who did hang up her rope bag, but really can rope calves just as good as any of the girls rodeoing, but doesn't have the opportunity to go. Maybe you only rodeo in the summer when you haul your kids to a couple junior rodeos and then you duck off to an amateur rodeo here and there. That lady, that woman, that mom, she wants that place to have that check where she can go and feel celebrated. We have tried to really incorporate all female rodeo athletes into women's rodeo. And that is a vision in its own self. Because if you think about professional athletes or even college athletes, what do they say? It's like less than 10%, right? The top 3% are the ones that are actually making a living professional rodeoing. The rest of us are just doing this because we love the sport, because we don't want to quit, because it's in our blood. It's like a drug and you feed off of that adrenaline of being entered. And so women's rodeo has incorporated all of those elements. The ladies in the beginning or maybe end. Maybe when I'm 65 years old, I still want to go rope a calf every once in a while for a little bit of money and have that kind of feeling again and still have a chance. In the breakaway competition, the limited is a deed breakaway jackpot. So that allows more ladies to have a chance for money. So really, you know, the innovation side of what women's rodeo has done is to become this inclusive environment for all female rodeo athletes. I had the greatest opportunity on the planet, and I got to be the assistant coach for Team Freeriders and still am for the Kid Rockin' Rodeo. And we were kind of deemed the underdogs for the first year. It was like, you guys didn't get to draft your team. They came out of who won at Rodeo Corpus Christi, you know, the WCRA team.
You did. You kind of had like a hodgepodge of athletes.
Absolutely. And we went in there to AT&T Stadium and we won. We split $500,000 between our team. And it was one of those things where they're like, no way are you guys ever going to win. And just mouthing the whole time. But talk about an innovative idea between team concept of rodeo. My blessing was that I came as a college rodeo coach for 15 years. And I knew what it was like to put a team together and build a team atmosphere. I never, ever wanted anybody in my team to not think that they didn't have somebody in their corner. So I was running. I mean, I ran, I don't know how many miles at AT&T Stadium every year that we've had it, because I'd go to the roping side. Then I'm behind the bucking chutes and I'm helping with the bucking horses. And, you know, just whatever you need, you had a coach in your corner. And I kind of coached college that way. And Trevor Brazil he grabs my arm and he's like, "What are you doing?" I go, "I don't know. I'm trying to win a dang rodeo. What are you doing?" And he goes, "You're running around like a crazy person." I said, "This is how I lead. This is how I coach. I will never ask somebody on my team, whether it's who I work with or somebody who I coach, to do something that I physically won't do. Like, I'll get in I'm a trencher. I get in the trenches and we're going to battle together." And so he was just like, "You've lost your dang mind." I'm sweating. I'm washed out. I got probably makeup all over me, but I'm, combing out bucking horses' manes and, making sure that they get headed out good, and then kicking the corner in for the guys and helping pick, who's doing what, petting barrel horses. I mean, I almost got taken out by a barrel horse just trying to get it in the arena because she had such a hard time. Her horse was panicked in AT&T. And I'm like, "Do you trust me?" And she's like, "I think." And I grabbed him and I grabbed 2 pickup men and I ran across the arena with her horse. And she was just like, she's lost her mind. But
There's nothing you won't do.
well, it's just sometimes people have crazy ideas. And I guess I saw that growing up with the things that Grandpa did. They had at the Orange County Fair in Reno, Rosser, my uncle, is very instrumental in this, but we called it like the extreme rodeo, but the Jackass rodeo. If you watch Jackass, that was the teeter-totter was my grandfather's, and it says Flying U Rodeo on it, the first Jackass movie. And so we kind of called it. And so they would do all these crazy extreme things with bulls and buffalo and all this crazy stuff. But the fans loved it. They ate it up. They never left their seats for hours at the Orange County Fair. I mean, you're in the heart of LA and really fancy to do people, and they were eating it up. And so when you see innovative things like that, you can either sit back and speak ill of it, or you can kind of join in and see what works. And then, like I said, be malleable and take all the good and take the bad and then make it better every year. And that's kind of what women's rodeo continues to do. We want it to be an experience. We have a back number gala and we let the ladies get dressed up into their beautiful ball gown, whatever they want to wear. If you want to wear jeans and a t-shirt, wear jeans and t-shirt. We don't care. But there's some ladies that pretty much make it like cowboy prom. That's their one chance to have that back number ceremony that they made, and they want to be celebrated. And, we have ladies walking around so they can get hors d'oeuvres and cocktails and, whatever they want. And so we just try to really make it an experience so that when you make it there, you're like, "I want to come back and I want to help this grow." So that's kind of, I don't know, that was a lot of information for one, for one question, but
I love it. Well, and you said something too that kind of got me to thinking, you are probably one of the few people who, when you use the phrase, "That's not the way Grandpa did it," that is actually a good thing as far as like your innovation versus being stuck in the past, just knowing that you really do come from a family of innovators. But on that topic, and you brought up a good point about rodeos, especially on the California side of things, which is where you're from. Growth also is going to bring some challenges. What obstacles do you see that rodeo is going to have to tackle head on, let's say, if it's going to thrive to the next generation? I do kind of think about California and how many of the rodeos that your grandpa started in areas no longer exist because it's a place that does not want rodeo to exist. And how are we going to navigate those challenges in the future?
With history comes knowledge, right? And so we have to learn from the past, and we have to see the things that worked and the things that didn't. I think about, obviously the hardest topic is animal welfare, and education is the best tool that we have. And we have to continue to educate society on how much we care and the passion that we have behind the animals. And the animals that not only we are competing with as a teammate, but the animals we're competing on. When you look at probably the most controversial would be probably the tie down roping at this point. I think that you don't want any event to ever go away, and you want to continue. Like, I know that LA County, I believe, is still fighting to not allow any animals to be competed on whatsoever. And that could go jumping, that can go racing, that can go so many different elements. And I just think that a lot of it is education, and then to be mindful. We as contestants, we as leaders in the industry have to see both sides of the story. There's been a lot of times I was 16 years old and spoke at the California legislature about a bill that was trying to be passed about having veterinarians on site at any equine event, right? Which you and I both know a little roping club can't afford to pay a vet to come to their event. And so really it was just kind of driving that knowledge behind why this won't work. Do we have vets on call at every single event? Absolutely. My vet is on speed dial 24/7. I text him, I call him. I mean, anything that happens, or if I have questions, even for rodeo team people, contestants, anything that I can do to kind of help, because our animals mean so much to us. And I think that, it's going to be an issue. Do I have the answers? Absolutely not. But we have to continue to educate, and we have to continue to have our doors open and our minds open as well. And we have to be able to explain the history behind why these events are the way that they are, so that people can see that. Because when you think about soccer and tennis and football, football can be potentially, if you think about CTE and some of the traumatic brain injuries that happen in football can be on the chopping block. I know that there's a lot of people that are very passionate about stopping any sort of youth sports because of brain injuries. But if you, as a contestant, understand the welfare behind it, right? And we know our risks, and we know that, I could walk outside and trip and fall and hit my head, and I could be gone just as fast. It's all, whatever the plan is the plan, and we just have to just continue to live. But we have to do a good job of educating society and continuing to tell our story and our past, but then continue to be mindful of some of those things that can be controversial. And then when you look at, my favorite part about breakaway roping is that 97 probably percent of the time, and that's my own hypothetical statistic, the calf wins, right? Pretty girl, pretty horse, rides out of the box, ropes the calf, rope breaks away, calf scurries on back to the back end of the arena and happy to be back there eating hay and drink some water, and no big deal. And it's easy to watch. Barrel racing's easy to watch. Team roping can have its own, kind of hiccups every once in a while when a steer gets stopped. But women's team roping is not quite as fast. It's not quite as, there's not a lot of trajectory that happens in the run. So women's rodeo is an easy sell. And I think that if people start to look at that, when you can include 50% of the population is women, I hate to break it to you, that is the truth. And women, though they can have their own issues, women like to see other women compete. Look at what's going on with Caitlin Clark and how instrumental she's been with the WNBA. Yeah, the other athletes, they are hard on her, and has only made her better and only made her brand better and only continued to grow the sport. But if you see like what Caitlin Clark has done, the same thing can happen with women in the rodeo world. And I'm very passionate about that. But really, we just have to continue to educate and really stick together, because the hardest part is when everybody's like, this big entity is fighting this big entity, and they're, at wits against each other. And I'm like, hey, I'm open door. I want to work with everybody. I don't want to compete against a Ruby Buckle event while I'm trying to have a women's rodeo event. I would rather work with Ruby Buckle, and let's make this all, women's rodeo and Ruby Buckle coming together and to make something great together. Because when we fight for the same group of people, you got to figure the demographics of athletes is limited. You're looking at women in barrel racing, maybe 100,000 in the world, at least in the United States, 100,000. There's going to be 9 billion people in the world. And you're talking about barrel racing at 100,000. You're talking about women in the breakaway roping at maybe 15 to 16,000. That's including some youth, and team roping's even less than that. We need to work together. We can't fight each other for the same thing.
No, not at all. Unfortunately, it ends up where you just end up eating yourself. And especially kind of going back to the root of that question, we have other adversaries that we need to be more focused on. Mm-hmm. And it is not ourselves. It is what is coming at us from the outside. And I also love what you bring up about Caitlin Clark as far as how many people are now interested in women's college basketball, even though she's no longer a player, right? She's moved on to the WNBA. Obviously, WNBA numbers have surged as well, but men, women, kids, your grandma, your grandpa, everybody is watching women's basketball now. And honestly, the same thing for Taylor Swift in the NFL. Yeah, I get that Taylor Swift is not an athlete. And if you're listening to this and you don't like her, she's not really my cup of tea either. However, do you know how thankful the NFL is for her? Because now people who were never watching football, who could care less, who couldn't even probably spell the word football, are now tuning in. Like, that is all it takes.
And most of the new demographic is women. And
Yes.
this is another like, hey, newsflash, sorry, but women are generally the ones that spend the money in the household.
I was just going to say that. They're the ones who are purchasing your
jerseys.
This guy's jersey and whatnot. It's not the guy. Justin's never been into a Sports Zone or a FanDuel or whatever. I couldn't even tell you one of those places, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's women, females are making those purchases, and they're making purchases at tack stores and farm stores and all of the other elements related to our industry. So it only makes sense that there is a larger seat at the table. I am a big believer in, if there's not a seat there, build your own table and invite who you need to and want to in order to feed as many people as possible. And that is absolutely what you guys have done.
Our favorite thing is that we have qualifier series, and that is working with producers across the country that allow us to use their event to be a qualifier in straight to women's rodeo. So we take the top 20 in the leaderboard and the pro challenger and 50 in the limited. And then we have these qualifier series. We have 20 in the barrel racing, 20 in the team roping, and 20 in the breakaway. And that gives you a chance to be in Oregon to go to a qualifier series, win your spot, and then get a straight shot to women's rodeo. So we're not competing to having these major events, to be a qualifier series. We're just working with producers already that are already producing the event. And it's maybe my favorite element of that. Women's rodeo is really trying to work with the entire industry instead of fighting.
Rooted in community.
Yes. I call it the sisterhood.
Yes. No, it totally is, because collaboration and community is what is going to continue to make us stronger. It's not trying to work against each other. We all have to be rowing our boat in the same direction. And you guys have been such great examples of that. We still have to get to the rapid fire round. But before we do that, I have one question for you. If you could leave listeners with one big takeaway about the future of rodeo for both cowboys and cowgirls, what would it be?
One major takeaway?
Yes, maybe two.
Is that if somebody has a crazy idea, give it a chance. Give it a chance. When you see things that will potentially make our sport that we are so passionate about, that we love, that we are addicted to, when you see somebody that has an idea that might make it mainstream, don't be scared. Lean into it. Be okay to see a little change in a very traditional sport, because those little changes are what is going to continue to grow the industry and to grow the sport, because we need as many new eyeballs on our traditions as possible. So lean into that and be okay with maybe a little bit of change in some formatting, or maybe a light bar system that opens the chute and you don't get to nod. Be okay with a little bit of change. Be okay with that uncertainty of what you've worked so hard on your craft, that maybe it's going to take us to the next level, to the NFL, to the NBA. Maybe it puts rodeo where you can actually get paid to compete instead of paid to win. And so that is what some of these kind of out of the box minds that come into our sport, and they work so hard to make it, and then they get shut down because of tradition. I would really want cowboys and cowgirls to see some of this kind of innovative stuff and lean into it and be like, okay, but maybe you should try, but don't be scared to say that, hey, I think that maybe if you adapted this a little bit, it might make it better. Because then you end up in a position like me and you're commissioner.
And then you're, the commissioner.
Yeah, then you're doing all these other different elements. But if I wouldn't have done that, I would continue to be in the position that I'm in, and I wouldn't have had some amazing doors open for me. And so I just wish that everybody would maybe lean in a little bit to some of the innovative stuff that could potentially happen with our amazing sport.
Well, and I would even take that advice outside of rodeo. Everything at one time was brand new. And even before it was brand new, it was somebody's crazy idea. The things that we absolutely know and love. Think Yeti, right? A Stanley, right? It was a crazy idea at one time. It was a brand new product. And now how many of us couldn't live without them? That is the one example, because it's sitting right in front of me on my desk, right? You too. Look at that. But the point being, everything that we know and love and surround ourselves with was brand new at one time. And before it was even new, it had to be somebody's wild and crazy idea. And so I just encourage you to believe in people's big dreams and their big vision, because who knows what the future is going to hold on that. Okay, let's get to the rapid fire round. First question for you, Linz. What do you hope people remember most about you?
That I led with grace and passion and kindness.
You've checked all the boxes on that,
Thanks.
I believe.
I want people, I mean, I can be very direct and passionate, and I hope they see the passion behind it, but I always try to say hi. I always try to give hugs. I like to smile, and I hope that people see that. It's not fake, that I really do. I love the sport. I love people. I love to hear everybody's story. I don't know a stranger. If you ever want to have a visit, I'm your guy because I like to talk. So,
what is a non-negotiable in your life?
Non-negotiable in my life is don't mess with my people. Like I said, I can be very nice, but then don't mess with my people. I'm passionate about my people. And my people, it's like obviously my family and my kids and my maternal family and my married family, but my friends and my people I'm very passionate about the people in my life and the people who have given me so much and lean into me and my craziness, and non-negotiables, don't mess with my people.
Well, and I will say I have seen that firsthand, not because I've ever messed with your people, but because we do. I want to really clarify that, but we have a number of mutual friends, and you are such a good friend to them too. And that I'm thinking of specifically, that I just think that you have really been a rock for. And that is seen by me, and I'm not even involved. So I can only imagine how much that means to them and what a great friend you are. So, okay, next question. This says if you were a professional athlete, but technically you are a professional athlete in a regard, right? What would your walk-up song be? Or what is your walk-up song?
So my pump-up song would be AWOL Nation Sail. And I don't know why, but this song just pumps me up. So I would probably have it as my walkout song because I don't know, it just makes me want to go win first. So
I love that. Okay, next question for you. What's the smartest thing someone's ever told you?
This is going to sound weird, but the smartest thing that someone ever told me is don't hire somebody that you can't fire.
Ooh, that is great advice, especially for this show.
And that doesn't, when you think about it, it can be applied to coaching. It can be applied to so many different things. And our industry is small, and you think your wings are wide and your roots are deep, but really we're less than 7 degrees of separation to everything within the Western lifestyle and Western industry, between rodeo and ag and all of that. And that is a hard part of being a leader, is when you have to make tough decisions. And I think that when somebody told me that at one point, I was like, whatever. But really, don't hire somebody that you can't fire. So family, I mean, that goes to so many different elements, but that's probably one of the smarter things that someone's ever told me.
That is very, very solid advice. Okay, last question for the day. Let's talk about favorite things. Do you have a favorite podcast, book, programs, life hack, something that has just changed your life and you want more people to know about it?
I wish that I could say I'm a hardcore podcaster. I'm not. I'm like a hopeless romantic. I don't like scary movies. I don't like the murder.
You and me both.
I don't like murder mystery stuff. It freaks me out. I'm in a pickup in the dark by myself too many times where you're going to have a blowout and some, serial killer's going to get you.
I'm not a true crime girl at all.
I hate it. I'm kind of a rainbows and butterflies. I feel like life can be so hard. I would say my favorite thing to do is to freaking play catch with the boys and like spend time with them. And if we're watching football or baseball, we watch sports all the time because that's what they're into. And I guess just lean into your whatever makes everybody in the family happy is kind of what makes me happy. I mean, if it's football is about to start. You got Sunday is the mock draft and all the things. And I mean, we're like serious around here about football. And so I don't know. I'm kind of a sad country love song kind of girl. I like Hallmark movies. It sounds silly and sappy, but
nope. I also like Hallmark movies. Okay, so wait. So now that we know that you are a football fan and this is football season, what team are you constantly pulling for?
This home has to be, the Denver Broncos because we're in Colorado. But my great-grandfather played for the Detroit Lions like a long time ago, 100 million years ago. And so I'm a Detroit Lions. I kind of like always, they never win.
No, they really don't. But, the underdog, right? They're going to win someday.
I know.
You can't be a loser forever.
Yeah, but they're good. So the Detroit Lions.
Okay, well, we learned a fun fact about you. Your great-great-grandpa or great-grandpa played for the Detroit Lions. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, now we know.
Yeah.
Linsay, this was so wonderful. Where can people follow you online if they want to stay up to date or learn more about you?
If you're interested in women's rodeo, womensrodeochampionships.com. Me personally, I'm on all social media platforms as Linsay Lee, because that's kind of what I've always been. So LINSAYLEE, because I don't have a D and I have an A. My dad doomed me to not be able to spell my entire life because of it. So
I love that. Well, Linsay, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This has been an incredible episode. You guys know you'll catch us back here next week. Brand new episode of Leaders of the West coming soon. So we'll see you then.
If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.